You know, everyone knows 1st of April is what? Is the official fake news day. That's the only day that you can have fake news and people laugh about it. It's not so serious. So you know that's not real, right? But today my message is real. It's about the extraordinary meal. And Singapore being a foodie nation, we have lots of good and real food. Right? How many of you already had your breakfast this morning? Well done. When we say extraordinary, do we mean like gourmet cuisine? Do we mean 3 Michelin star fare? Do we mean the scrumptious breakfast that we always get at the cafe? Are we talking about that? Actually, no. We're talking about not the quality that's extraordinary. We're actually talking about the quantity today. That how Jesus, in one sitting, was able to feed 20,000 people. The quantity, that's the extraordinary part. And so today, we have to realize that feeding 20,000 people, it may not be a feat that was gastronomical, but definitely it was a feat that was astronomical. Because even if you had the resourcing, you had the ability, it would still be quite a feat to feed so many people at one go. All right, so today, if you're ready with your cutlery, can we turn to John chapter 6, verse 1 to 15. It will be on the screen, so you can follow with me if you like. Okay, verse 1. After these things, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, or Tiberias. A large crowd followed him because they saw the signs which he was performing on those who were sick. Then Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was near. Therefore Jesus, lifting up his eyes and seeing that a large crowd was coming to him, said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so that these may eat?" This he was saying to test him, for he himself knew what he was intending to do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, for everyone to receive a little. Verse 8. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are these for so many people?" And Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." Now there was much grass in the place, and so the men sat down, in number about 5,000. Jesus then took the loaves, and having given thanks, he distributed to those who were seated. Likewise also of the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were filled, he said to his disciples, "Gather up the leftover fragments so that nothing will be lost." And so they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves which were left over by those who had eaten. Verse 14. Therefore, when the people saw the sign which he had performed, they said, "This is truly the prophet who is to come into the world." So Jesus, perceiving that they were intending to come and take him by force to make him king, withdrew again to the mountain by himself alone. So how does it feel like feeding 20,000 people? Let's look at this. It's a lot of people, right? The Bible said feeding of the 5,000. But as you read there, only counting the men. And so most Bible scholars, when they round up the number, including the women and the children, it would be around the region of 20,000. So this miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 is unique in a few ways. One, it's the only miracle other than the Lord's resurrection that is recorded in all 4 Gospels. Right? So it must be important. All 4 Gospels repeat this same story. Okay? But in John's Gospel, it's important because at this moment is the 4th sign of Jesus as the Messiah. But it's the first I am saying that you hear from Jesus. There are 7 I am sayings. He said, "I am the light of the world. I am the gate. I am the shepherd." But this is the first time when he says, "I am the bread of life." And so this is very critical in John's theology, this first miracle of Jesus in feeding the 5,000. So what's the big idea for today? Today's big idea in the sermon is this, that Jesus, who is the extraordinary bread of life, chooses to partner with ordinary people to satisfy the need of humankind. You know, Jesus, he's extraordinary because whatever human need there is, whatever you can name, known and unknown, even we might be unconscious of the need that we might have, but Jesus is extraordinary because he can meet every single one of those needs of humankind. But the other bit about this story of extraordinary meal is that this extraordinary bread of life chooses and invites us and allows us to participate with him, in feeding, in meeting the needs of the people. And that's the big idea. And so there are 4 things that we can learn from this story that we can do. It's our part. 4 things. All right. The first thing that we need to do in participating in this grand feeding of people, first thing we need to do is to learn to feel the need. Okay, verses 4 to 7. Let's look at it again. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was near. Therefore, Jesus, lifting up his eyes and seeing that a large crowd was coming to him, said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so that these may eat?" This he was saying to test him, for he himself knew what he was intending to do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, for everyone to receive a little. You know, hunger is a basic, universal need. How many of you have ever experienced hunger in your life? Huh? How many of you were ever babies? What do babies experience? What's the first thing the babies experience? When they cry, what is the main thing? It's because they're hungry, right? So if you have ever been a baby, you would know what it means to feel hungry, to have hunger. And so we're talking here about people who are hungry, but not just people that we don't understand hunger. We understand hunger as well, because we are part of that universal need. We are part of the people who experience that. And the way God has made us, we are to, we have to eat every day, right? So the Lord's Prayer was, give us this day our daily bread. We are not like camels, you cannot store food, and then for a whole week, we don't eat. So we have to eat every day. So it's a daily need that everyone has. But in our world, a very comfortable first world country, right? We've got affordable food, we have the convenience of finding food. In fact, for some Singaporeans, they have only one meal. It starts in the morning and ends at night. So we can do all that. We can kind of like enjoy food. But at this moment, after a long day of ministry, Jesus especially with healings and all that, they are really in the evening, they are tired and they are hungry. And in the other Gospels, they tell us that the disciples were ready to dismiss the crowd. They said, Jesus, tell them to go home now because, it's already late. We're all tired. We need rest. We need sleep. We need food. And these 20,000 people, ask them to go home, get the field, get some sleep. Tomorrow, come back again. Right? But in this, John's instance, John's Gospel has more personal data, but personal facts because he was close. So he could say Philip. In the other Gospels, Philip was not mentioned. Jesus asked Philip, right? He said, okay, look, we've got a problem. What's the problem? We've got a large crowd. That's our problem. But how do we solve it? What's the solution? So, buy bread. Buy bread. Right? Bread was a normal, staple, simple diet, simple food for the Jews, for people in those days. So their diet was probably bread, sometimes veggie, some fruits, olive. And every now and then, they would celebrate with meat and fish. But bread was something that everybody could eat. But even between bread, there was the wheat kind and the barley kind. The barley one was really more affordable. And so the poor people could eat the barley loaves. And so there was the problem, the need, right? There was the need, the crowd. And not only the crowd, but the disciples themselves were hungry. And Jesus said, buy bread. Now, that presented a big problem to Philip. Now the problem appears. Feed these people, how do we buy bread? We don't have the resources. In fact, where is the store open at this time? 20,000 people. How do we get 20,000? Yeah, 5,000 men, plus. So he was thinking to himself, Jesus, where are we to buy this bread? And this bread, even though we can buy it, will not be sufficient for even each one to take a little, Frankly, we don't know how, and there's no resource. So it was a situation that was impossible. Let me show you something. If you've been to Introduction to Psychology class, and I'm not going to go there, but I want to show you the pyramid, famous pyramid by Abraham Maslow. And it's called the hierarchy of needs. Now, please bear with me. This diagram will take us through the whole message, okay? So those of you who are psychologists, this is amateur take on this, right? But let me explain to you why I see this is important. So in his hierarchy of needs, he says that human beings are motivated, driven by certain needs. Okay, so at the base, the broadest is where the most basic needs of human beings are. All right, so if you're a human being, you have a body, you need sleep, you need rest, you need food. All right, these are the things that you need, so it's basic. But he says, if you cannot fulfill the basic need, it's very hard for us to think about another need on another level. You understand? So I don't know about you, but when I first learned of this, I felt it was true to me. It was like, yeah, I understand. If I don't even have food, I'm hungry, I'm not going to think about health. I'm not going to think about security, right? I'm not going to think about belonging. I don't have that. But even then, he kind of like elaborated later on, the esteem needs, beyond that, he said, there are two more. We can even say cognitive. People have a need to want to learn and want to know, like ask the questions why. And then aesthetics, not only that, we have a need, not just to have something, but to have something beautifully done, beautifully expressed. And then further on, not just self-actualization, not just trying to be who you want to be, but even further than that, we have an aspiration to become God-like. And so between these needs, the lower ones, he calls it the deficiency needs, the lack. All right? So when we have lack, we'll be like kind of stifled, we cannot move. But those above the line of esteem, I would call them proficiency needs. That means you grow into being, your being, who you want to be, who you can be, who you think you should be, the potentials that you have to become. And so in a first world country like ours, we are so thankful to God that most of us can aspire anywhere from the esteem needs up to self-actualization, right? If you've been, we have got basically the three needs covered, basically, right? You can marry anybody you want. It's free. You can have those needs met. It's quite safe. Relatively, and that's food. But for the Jews in those days, they were really thinking about the bottom three levels. You must be somebody to even think about esteem needs and self-actualization. You must come from a family. You must be in the royal line, whatever. But most people are really at the three bottom levels. And in this story, everybody is down to the most basic level, food. Right? The crowd was hungry. The disciples were hungry. I guess Jesus was hungry. So everybody now down to the most basic. This has become the most important need for them. Okay, and we know something. We know hungry people are what? Are angry people, cranky people. So there's the situation. Jesus is saying, no, don't dismiss the crowd. Buy bread for them. Feed this level of need. They have this need. They're not thinking about big things. They're thinking about that singular need. What can you do? So that was a dilemma. So what are we learning from this? I think Jesus is trying to tell us something about compassion and the basis for compassion. He's not saying see the need. He's asking us to feel the need. Because when we see the need, we have what we call sympathy. When I see a need, I can sympathize. But unless I can feel the need, it's hard for me to empathize. It's hard for me to understand. Right? I can't feel the need. I know I understand up here that you have a need, but if I don't go through it, I can't feel the need. Maybe this is why sometimes the Lord doesn't just quickly deliver us from all the challenges, all the difficulties of our life. Why? Because perhaps He wants us to understand, to experience, to go through. I remember the time when my wife had cancer, and we were going through this at the height of that. And then, people in the church, they know, but one brother from the Chinese congregation came to me and gave me this verse, two verses in 2 Corinthians. One 3 and 4. And he quoted the verse to me from the Chinese congregation. It must be an act of God. It was. So he said, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our affliction, so that we will be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God." So after this, you don't take Uber, you take comfort. 5 times, What is he saying? He's saying, in your affliction, you will receive comfort. And with the comfort that you have received, now you know how to help others who have the same affliction to comfort them. See? So, but God wants us to feel the need. There are many needs around us, and sometimes we see and we don't see. But to feel is the level where we need to do something about it. Otherwise, seeing won't move us, but feeling. So the disciples feel the same pangs, hunger pangs, as did the crowd. I'm sure Jesus also was hungry. He was a man like us, right? Fully man. So what must take place? The second point, second thing we must do. When we feel the need, the second thing that we are called to do is sow the seed. Okay, as you read here. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are these for so many people?" When you compare this record of the miracle with the other Gospels, you find that in the Gospel of John, like I said, he mentions names. So he mentions Philip, and then he mentions Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. But in all this telling of the story, there's no mention of the boy's name, who is practically the hero in this story, correct? It's the boy who gave something. Andrew didn't know what to do. In fact, Andrew's faith was very small. Philip said, "It's impossible. You're asking me to do something impossible." But this boy who sowed that seed, his name is never mentioned. But anyway, how can you think, how did Andrew find this boy in this crowd of 20,000? How did he do it? Maybe he went on Facebook, created a Kickstarter crowdfunding feeding program. He said, "We got 20,000. We need to feed them by tonight, by this evening. Help, send your resources, help us." But nobody responded except one small boy. And you know why small boys can respond? Because they're gullible, right? Vulnerable to scams, How do you know it's not a scam? How do you know Andrew is getting all this food just for himself? You don't know, right? But at the same time, being a child and being vulnerable, having a childlike dependence and faith, he's also not prone to skepticism, one, right? He's also not prone to ambition. He's not thinking, if I give 5, what do I get? Do I get anything or not? It's just like I give and then nothing left. So he's not ambitious. And then, thirdly, as a child, he's not easily embarrassed. Because if there was a call by Andrew, who has food, and I have 5 loaves and 2 fish, I won't give. You know why? Because I give to him is laughable. It's, what? You give me this for what? Because you can't even feed the 13 of us, Don't talk about the crowd. Right? 12 disciples and Jesus. So if you're easily, if you're skeptical, if you are kind of like always counting, or you think, if I give this away, it's just too little. Everybody's going to laugh at me. And so you kind of withhold. Right. Come back to the Abraham Maslow's pyramid, right? So we all need bread. So bread, okay? Now we are hungry, bread. But after you've been fed a lot of bread, you kind of like want to go a step higher, correct? Nowadays, most of us don't just want bread, we want healthy bread. We want gluten-free, non-genetically modified wholemeal bread. Right? We kind of move up the ladder a bit. And then we say, hey, but if I keep eating this bread, it's lonely, So why don't we kind of order a family-sized pizza or one-for-one dining? I can invite somebody. So we kind of move up. We're not just eating normal bread, we kind of move up. But as you go higher, you go esteem, you say, oh, I think bread is just too simple. I want to go for fine dining already. And finally, at the top, he said, I don't just want any bread. I want to make my own kind of bread. Now, you see, bread, if you had bread in the lowest level, maybe you can share with somebody. But when you have higher kind of bread, it's more and more difficult to share with people. You understand? Because it's special bread. I can't give you. If normal bread, maybe I can share. But as I get higher, this is fine dining. I can't just invite anybody because it's costly. So it gets harder and harder as you move up the ladder, even when food is concerned. So I want to say maybe 4 challenges to generosity. Why isn't it easy, like the boy, to just give, to be generous? Many of us will think twice. That's why only the boy gave the 5 loaves and 2 fish. How about the rest? So 4 challenges to generosity. First, we will say, hey, we are exactly in the same boat as you. You don't have, I also don't have. So don't ask me to share. I can't. It's very difficult. It's difficult to share when we are struggling with the same need. Okay? Understand. That's possible. Yeah. Second reason why we are calculating. We want a good return on our investments. We don't just want to invest. We want to harvest back. So, all right, if I give you 5 loaves, 2 fish, what are you going to give me back? So we're thinking, right? We're thinking, I must get something back. I cannot give you nothing, and I don't get anything back. So that's a challenge to generosity. Third challenge to generosity. We say, oh, look, the needs are really too great now. Even if I give you what I have, all I have, it's just a drop. It's just a drop in the ocean. And so we tend to think like that. Because we can't do everything, we'd rather not do anything. Because we can't do everything and meet everybody's needs, therefore, let's not even start. Let's not even try. It's just too mammoth. It's just too enormous. We cannot. So the next thing is, because we can't do everything, we rather not do anything. Fourthly, the struggle between theory and practice. Right? What is the difference between theory and practice? In theory, there is no difference. Okay, you get that tonight, but it's okay. The theory and practice. I picture, if the Lord asks me, he said, Meng Cham, you're a servant of the Lord. If you had 2 houses, would you give away one for the kingdom's sake? I said, sure, Lord. I'm your servant. If you ask me to, I will give. And then the Lord said, if you had 2 cars, would you give one away for the service of the kingdom? I said, sure. Anytime, Lord, you know I'm your servant. If God were to say, Meng Cham, if you had 2 guitars, would you give away one? I said, Lord, that's not fair. You know I have 2 guitars. See, that's the difference between theory and practice. In theory, we are all generous, right? But in practice, it's difficult. It's difficult, isn't it? So 2 pastors talking. One said, sometimes I would like to ask God why He allows poverty, suffering, injustice in the world when He can do something about it. And then the other pastor said, well, why don't you ask Him? Then he said, because He might ask me the same question. Why aren't you doing something about it? Jesus didn't create that meal out of thin air. He didn't, right? He fed the 5,000, but He needed an ingredient. All right? He needed something. Somebody had to give that seed. How laughable it is, how small, how impossible it is. Somebody had to give that. Somebody had to sow that seed and be generous. You see, a boy has no problem with this. He doesn't think about all this. It's very simple. You want? I give. I tell you later why he was so eager, he was so willing to give, but later. Okay, so first thing, you must feel the need enough to do something. Sow the seed. And then it becomes interesting now. It becomes extraordinary now. The third thing that we can learn is to do what they did, to watch Jesus feed. Watch Him feed. Jesus said, have the people sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down in number about 5,000. Jesus then took the loaves and having given thanks, He distributed to those who were seated. Likewise also of the fish as much as they wanted. When they were filled, he said to his disciples, gather up the leftover fragments so that nothing will be lost. So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves which were left over by those who had eaten. Now, I wonder what Andrew was thinking. When Andrew showed the Lord the 5 loaves and 2 fish, what was Andrew thinking? Andrew was probably thinking, maybe he thought he can help the Lord. He said, Jesus, this is 5 loaves, 2 fish, right? You're hungry. I tell you what, you just go by the backstage. We just lead a few songs, distract the people, and then you make a quick getaway lah. Because you don't have food for everybody. And you're the most, precious among us. So you take the food and then you go lah. But Jesus didn't do that. Jesus did something. He said, hey, have the people sit down, Organize them. Now, it's a test of faith. What's going to happen? Ask the people to sit down as though they were ready for a meal. What's the meal? Where is it going to come from? They don't know. So really, they've got to trust God now. This is an exercise of faith, to watch God do something, multiply something that is so minimal in the first place. So little. How is God going to do this? And then you notice, so the people sat down. And then Jesus took the loaves and the fish, and then when he multiplied, it became curry chicken. Did it become curry chicken? What did it become? Yeah. Or the crispy rendang. Yeah. So, what happened? The fish became more fish, right? The loaves became more loaves. Now, imagine with me. If that day, somebody surrendered his teriyaki chicken or his Wagyu beef to Jesus, And then when Jesus multiplied, everybody would have the chicken and the beef, right? Wow, that would go into the Guinness Book of World Records because we had chicken, we had the best beef, we had the best steak, the Kobe steak. But no, they had the same thing that the boy gave. So can you imagine? The quantity was Jesus' miracle, but the quality came from who? Came from the thing that we gave. So what does that tell us? It tells us in a very simple way that God, if God were to multiply the things that we give Him, to sow that seed, and then watch Him feed, the quality of what we give matters. Because He's not going to change the DNA. He's not going to turn the apple into durian. It's not going to happen. Right? It will be the same, but more. And it depends on what we offer to Him in the first place. And so we can learn from this that Jesus just multiplied the same thing, but then there is more. He said, as much as they wanted, He gave as much as they wanted, and then they were filled. In fact, there were leftovers. Now, Jesus is really the model or the example of Chinese hospitality, right? He gave more and more, So at the end, He said, "Sik bao mei ah." It's like, have you eaten your fill? Because there were leftovers. Everybody ate until they didn't want any more, until they were fully satisfied. So Jesus doesn't just make that miracle that is just enough. He gives us more than enough. But it requires faith. First of all, we have to realize that we are not the miracle worker. We can't multiply. We just give the basic, right? We can't. He is the miracle worker. And we can't feed. No matter how much we give to feed the needs of the world, it's impossible. But only one can. Jesus can. And so that should free us from the burden and guilt of saying, well, we have to just, it is not in us. The power is not in us to feed. What does God want us to do? What does Jesus want us to do? He wants us to feel the need, be compassionate, and then sow that seed, be generous, and then take a back step, and then, hey, watch that miracle happen right before our eyes. So 2 things we need to note about this exercise of faith that this is teaching us. First, there's a corresponding there's some corresponding between grace and generosity. Grace and generosity. You see, if everything we have is something that we work for and we work hard at it for, it's very difficult to be generous because we say, look, this is what I've worked for. This is what I've earned, right? And the Bible even says this, if you don't work, you don't what? You don't eat, So we say there's no free lunch. Don't look at my food, It's mine, I earn it. So in the same way, when we think that grace is something we earn, then it's very difficult for us to be gracious. It's very difficult for us to be generous because it's something we earn. The Lord loves me because I'm like that, because I'm that, As long as you earn grace, it's very difficult for you to be gracious and generous. But we must realize something. All of us are unworthy for anything good that comes from God. It is all by His grace, and grace alone. That's why we can be generous. Now, sometimes people give you, whether at Christmas or your birthday, something like, and then you look at it, you say, hey, I don't really want it. What happens? What happens to that? What happens to that? Those kinds of gifts, what happens? What do you do with them? You recycle, correct? you just recycle to somebody who is not connected with the person that gave you that, so that they won't say, "Hey, how come it's with you?" That would be an embarrassment. It's easy to recycle because we didn't earn it, right? You give me, I can give somebody. It's easy. So as soon as you think that something about you that God is favoring you for, instead of because of Jesus, that's where it's hard to exercise any faith at all. Okay, second thing, there's a correlation between abundance and opportunity. Abundance and opportunity. Because if you think if I give this away, I'll be in lack. Who's going to give me back? Right? Then you always feel that there's not enough. This is the poverty mentality. Now you see, this boy had no such problem. Why? Because when he goes home that night, and the mom asks, "Oh, so how was lunch? I gave it away." Who will get upset? Not the boy, right? The mom. Because the boy thinks, "Hey, tomorrow when I go again, you give me lunch. Right? The lunch is not ending on, It's the mom who thinks, "Hey, if I give you, where am I going to get money to buy the next?" See, the concern is not in the boy. The boy knows that if I give this lunch away, it's easy to give. I'll get another one tomorrow from my mother. Correct? So this abundance thinking is a different thinking. If you give away and think, "Hey, if I give away, who's going to give me back?" That is where it doesn't work, right? That's where you won't even exercise the faith. It becomes difficult to exercise. And so there's a verse in the Bible, 2 Corinthians 9, 7, and 8, that tells us something about the connection between grace, generosity, abundance, and the opportunity. Okay? So 2 Corinthians, each one must do just as he has purpose in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. We always kind of quote this when we take up or receive your offering, correct? And so when you give the offering, you have to put on a smile because God loves a cheerful giver. But this verse doesn't end there. It tells us why we can be cheerful. It tells us why we can be generous. You say, okay, listen to the next verse. And God is able. Wow. And God is able. Who else can be more able than God, If God is able, and God is able to do it, to make all grace abound to you. All grace. So that, always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed. Did you hear that? See? We can be a cheerful giver because it doesn't come from us. It doesn't say how we qualify. It says God is willing to lavish His grace on you. And He just gives you more and more. So why? So that you can always have an abundance in every good work. Because we think, we just do this, we don't have anything left already. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible says He's going to give you. Why? So that you can continue to give. And so that the glory and thanksgiving will go to God, which is the next verses. Okay, next verses. Now, this is a very important part, the last point of the message. Hopefully you've followed that, because this is the dessert, the best part of this meal. But don't desert me now, okay? So you need to hear this. This is very, very important. And I think the whole crux of this passage ends in these two verses. Okay? So fourthly, after you've learned this, you feel the need, you sow the seed, then you watch Him feed. Fourth thing you need to do, you need to follow His lead, Jesus' lead. Okay, see what happens here. You see, after the miracle, therefore, when the people saw the sign which he had performed, they said, "This is truly the prophet who is to come into the world." So Jesus, perceiving that they were intending to come and take him by force to make him king, withdrew again to the mountain by himself alone. See, bread was not just the staple diet of the Jews, but bread also had spiritual significance. Because for the Passover, they were instructed to eat unleavened bread. And then when they were in the wilderness, they were fed by manna, which they said was bread from heaven. And then when Moses set up the tabernacle, there was a table, and the table had the bread of God's presence. So they knew the bread, it wasn't just a metaphor for every need that a human being had, but it also had some spiritual significance. So when they saw this sign and saw Jesus performing it, straight away, something clicked, Something clicked in them. They said, wow, the only person who has ever done that was Moses. And also Elisha. If you read 2 Kings, Jesus is not the first prophet to multiply food. Elisha was. Elisha was given 20 loaves of bread, barley loaves of bread, and he fed 100, So this miracle straight away reminded them of this, wow, this is truly a prophet. He is among us. He's like Moses. Moses prophesied there would be a prophet like him, And then Elisha, wow, this really attests to the fact that Jesus is the prophet. And so they were ready to move him up that ladder. But you see, his reaction was very, very different. Because Jesus realizes and he knows that the most basic need of a human being was not physiological. It was not the bread. It was something more. The most basic, the ultimate, and the greatest need of every human being is the spiritual and the eternal need of connecting back with God. So you see, Jesus didn't come as a prophet. He didn't come to give bread. He said, I did not come to give bread. I come to be the bread of life. John 6:35, he tells us, I am the bread of life. Wow. So Jesus said, look, if I feed you today, I have to feed you again tomorrow. Don't go for food that perishes. Go for that which is eternal. I have come to give you something that is even lower than that. You see, for most people today, we want to say, oh, below physiological needs is what? Is Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi need. But Jesus said, no. There's something more profound, deeper than you understand. If you can't figure this out, you find that the whole pyramid does not make sense to you. Jesus said what? When he was tempted at his hungriest moment. When was that? After 40 days in the wilderness, in the desert. Satan came to him and said, look, you are hungry, right? You're a human being, right? Now, say to this rock, make it bread. I'm sure God will understand because you're hungry. You're a full man, God knows after 40 days of not eating, you're hungry. What did Jesus say? Jesus said, man shall not live by bread alone. So he's saying, okay, bread, I know, that's the lowest bit, but there's something even more important than that. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. There's something even more important than the basic need of everyone, the universal need of everyone to feed themselves. There's a more basic one, and that's the spiritual and eternal bread that all of us must eat. And you see something? They wanted to take him by force to make him king. And this is a strong word, to take him by force. They want to seize him and put him as the king. Why? Because if I've got a king who can meet my needs miraculously, wonderful, Every day I don't have to worry about food, I don't have to worry about work, you just feed me, king. And you see in the Bible, Jesus seems to be very fame shy, He's like, you know what they do? Okay, I'm going to show you the triangle one last time. And not triangle, the pyramid. Okay, same lah, it's triangle, right? Okay, one last time. Okay, he was meeting their needs at this lowest level, right? And then they're telling him, look, we can help you ascend this pyramid like that, We can help you become, wow, self-actualized, the king. You don't have to worry about going through this. We will make you king. So it was like, hey, that's my fast upward mobility. I can just reach it just like that. But you see, the Bible said that Jesus withdrew, and then he went away again to the mountain by himself alone. So, what is Jesus trying to tell us? Jesus tells us something, In coming to us, he turned the hierarchy upside down. Nobody, this transcendence, right? Nobody can be as transcendent as Jesus, the second person in the Trinity. He was God, He was not just man trying to be God. He was God. But you notice, he kind of demoted himself at every level. Right? Talk about self-esteem, right? Where was he born? He was born in a manger among the animals, right? A carpenter's son. What about the family, the love and belonging? He left the family of the Trinity to come to us. What about safety? What about health? Nothing, He was exposed to the vilest, the most corrupt, the most wicked of humankind. And he came like a baby, without guards, without protection. And then on the cross, he was thirsty on that cross. And when he died, he was practically naked, like a criminal. So Jesus said, I'm the bread of life. He who comes to me will not hunger. He who believes in me will never thirst. So you see, for Jesus, he came all the way down. Instead of the way we would normally go, we would like to go all the way up, right? The way he was, he came all the way down because he knew the most basic need of man was not this. It was to be reconciled to God the Father. And that was the only way. It was that spiritual need that even Abraham Maslow does not recognize and does not see. And Jesus came all the way down. Instead of us trying to go all the way up, he came all the way down for us. And so, in this simple direction, you notice that the prosperity gospel is not the gospel of Jesus. See, the prosperity gospel tells us to go all the way up, right? All the way up. That's the ladder of humankind, the motivation, why we live every day. It's just to go up. Right? That's the prosperity. That's not the prosperity gospel, actually. That's part of the whole idea. It's not the gospel of Jesus, because although and thankfully God has given us all these things. In our country, we have the ability to tap into all this good. But to stay there is where the problem is. The prosperity gospel says God has enabled you to meet all those needs, but you stay there for yourself. But when you look at Jesus' model, although he was up there, he came all the way down. What did the Bible say? Although he was rich, he became poor, so that we in our poverty can become rich. That's the amazing grace of God. Let's see John MacArthur, he says this. He said the true gospel is a call to what? It's a call to self-denial. It's not a call to self-fulfillment. Okay? So what does this teach us? This teaches us that we need to understand and imitate and follow after the Jesus model of love. Love makes us want to go down to meet people's needs and not just think about it for ourselves. So it's not about self-fulfillment. Yes, when we know the Lord, he helps us, right, bit by bit. So there are two things. First, when we come to the Lord, we feed on Christ. Right? He is the bread. And then by feeding on him, we grow. We develop. We understand who we are supposed to be. We have the skills. We have the wisdom. So we grow up, okay? So we move up the ladder. We move up the pyramid. That's fine. But after a while, when you become mature, there is a moment when God calls you to follow Christ. In his example, what? All the things that you have acquired, give your best on behalf of Christ to meet the needs of others. If you're higher somewhere in the pyramid, right, you can meet somebody's needs below. That's what Jesus did. He came all the way down to meet men at the greatest need. So I'm not saying that, you can't self-actualize. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that with the ability that God has given you to be who you are and where you are, you have to think about not just keep going up, At one time in your life, you have to think about looking down at those needs that are there below you. And all of us have something that we can contribute to somebody else at some other level. Okay? So what are some examples? I don't know if you know Samantha Lim, who used to be with on staff with the creative arts. And you might have sung some of her songs. She has one song that we were singing, it's Lord, I want nothing more. I want nothing more than your presence. And she has another song, Apple of your eye, right? His eye, your eye. Okay, apple of God's eye. So, but she resigned. Why? Because she felt compelled to go now, this year, to minister to refugees. I can't fault her for that. You know why? Because when we talk about music and songs and nice, it's really, we are quite high already. It's about aesthetics, the need for aesthetics, having a beautiful, well-written song. And she's anointed, she sings well. It's a beautiful work of art. And we kind of like, wow, we can revel in it. But she's saying that although God has given me this gift, but there are a lot of people below that needs help. For example, those refugees, they're displaced, kind of dislocated, right? Family, they don't have family. So talk about love and belonging needs, not there. Talk about safety needs, not there. They don't know where they're going to go next. Nobody wants them. And so she has taken upon herself to be what? Missional. To want to now impart what she has, not just to fulfill that, that feeling of call of God, to be a songwriter, but to do a bit more than that, to go down to where people's needs are more basic. Pastor Morris, who was here, who sang for me the last time I preached, he is going to a place that very few of us would want to go. And he was the music pastor of ICA in Hong Kong. But his lifelong passion was to go to a place, I can't tell you where the place is, but it's a place that nobody wants to go to minister. Why? Because he knows that the deepest need is not just a need for beauty and music. It's something more basic. People who do not know God, people who do not know the bread of life. So he has gone. So what can you and I do? What can you and I do to follow Jesus' lead in this way? Go for mission trip, right? Mission trip. No, they didn't ask me to say this. I'm just telling you. Because all of us have something to offer. I know some people come tell me, no, I don't think, there's nothing I can do. I'm not gifted. If you ask me to go, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do with children. I don't know what to do. Pastor Kelvin and I, we went for a mission trip many, many years ago, and we were asked to do children, to minister to the children, You don't look horrified, And so the best we could do was do puppet show, So, we had this thing cover us, and then we do puppet, right? So when we started, all the children cried. They were so traumatized by our attempt at children ministry. But we try. See, so it's not for lack of trying, because the miracle is not in our hands, it's God. Correct? Now, as a first world country, not only can we give the bread of life, we can help people, help them, help the churches, governance, financial planning, strategic planning, education, innovation. The many, many things we are ahead already. We're ahead by leaps and bounds. If every one of us were to do something, we'll be following in the steps of the Lord Jesus. Not just going all the way out, every day trying to ascend the pyramid, but also think about all that God has given you to now descend. The weekly, we have Lingkok Baru, where they actually give food. There is also Rich, also does that. At the Bukit Batok, we also do that. So there are many, many programs where we can actually do something tangible. We will not be able to feed everybody's needs. We will not be. But we will sow a seed and watch the master feed. Okay, things that you can do. So I'm going to close the service now. So Ben, that's to tell the band to come out. Okay. We need to pray. We need to pray. What is God asking us? What is God telling us in this extraordinary meal? We know that He is the one who multiplies, but He multiplies with whatever we give Him. We give Him something better, He's able to multiply that. Quality control is us. Quantity control is Him. Right? So what can we give to God? And so today, as we close this message on extraordinary meal, here are the ingredients again. First, be willing to feel the need. Be willing to be compassionate. Remember those hungry years? I mean, you could be high up in the pyramid now, but remember those times when you were trying to make it, the struggles. When you see somebody who's like that, don't forget the hungry years. Start to take time and say, God, I'm just going through the motion. I don't feel anything, Everything is like intellectual. I can see a need, I can visualize, I can rationalize, but I don't feel the need. Maybe you need to take time to just take a step back and say, God, help me feel the need. Help me to remember what it means to be hungry, to be without family, to have no self-esteem, to struggle, to try to grasp at something, at some meaning and significance in life. Help me to remember that. Secondly, perhaps the Lord is saying, sow the seed. You and I have something. Yeah, I have something. Maybe it's an experience. Maybe it's the knowledge that we have. Maybe it's wisdom. We can always give and sow that seed for somebody else's need if we don't think about ourselves all the time. Learn to be generous, because God is the one who gives us grace so that we can abound in good deeds. Thirdly, God may be telling us today, be expectant, have faith, watch Him feed. We can only do so little, but He's not constrained by our limitations. God is not limited by our limitations. Amen? We have just be willing to give. Give what you have. And sometimes the call may be to give all you have. And still that will not be enough. But as His grace gives us, we have more to give. As we give, He gives us so that we can be a giver. God doesn't want us to cook the meal, He just wants us to be the distributors of meal. He wants us to be food pandas. We don't cook it. We have to just tell people, this is the bread of life. This is Jesus. You need Jesus. Finally, maybe God is telling us, follow His lead. Be missional. Thank God. Thank God for all that He has given you. You could be prosperous. You could have great significance. You have you are really at the top of self-actualization. Praise God for that. But maybe you can take time and say, Lord, with all that you have given me, I'm thankful for that. I don't take that for granted. But what can I do with all that you have given me? When I look at other people so far below in that pyramid, what can I do? Ultimately, what can I do to point people to the greatest need of all? To have you, to know you as their bread of life. To know that when they feed on you, God, they will never be hungry again. When they drink of your living water, they will never be thirsty again. They will have life eternal. And every other need they have will be minor compared to this most important need of making you the Lord of their lives. And so let's come before God and say, Lord, what are you telling me? What are you asking of me?